just waiting for you. Do,
I've been wearing Sperry boat shoes since I was a kid, and my dad did too. Whenever we would fish, my pops was always in his Sperry's, and so was I. They have the best boat shoes on the planet. There's really no competition. So use our exclusive code BFC20 to shop now and get 20% off your purchase of $99 or more. Offer is valid till September 1st. Again, that code is BFC20. Go check them out. That come at you for targeting sharks.
Well, I wouldn't even consider them haters. Sometimes people just come to the beach and they very seldom, maybe like one out of like 20 or 30 people come to the beach and they'll say, "You're fishing, you're catching sharks. Are you hurting them? Why are you catching them?" And a lot of people, not a lot of people, but very small percentage of people come to the beach and they say something like that, and then I pull them to the side. I explain the whole idea of what it is to tag sharks, why sharks are so important, why they're here on the coming to our oceans and closer to shore and everything like that. And then all of a sudden they just completely, their demeanor switches and they're like, "Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for educating me, and thanks for getting all the kids involved and getting everybody involved in the fishing experience."
Nice. Let's hear a little bit more about your conservation efforts around sharks.
So over the past couple years, I've tagged a bunch of sharks. Most recently, the DEC has, which is the New York State, everybody knows the New York, basically the fish police for New York State. They just banned tagging. You're not allowed to tag the three prohibited species, which is the dusky, the brown shark, also known as the sandbar, or the sand tiger. Now, before they made that rule, I've tagged a good amount of them. It was like 7, 8, 9 years ago when I first started, and then they came out with that rule a couple years later. But now I can only tag whatever's hanging out that's beside those three species. So there's blacktip, sharp nose, there's spinners, there's thrashers, there's what else? Bulls, and then also rough-tailed stingrays they want me tagging. But what the tagging does is the the association NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Association, which is up north. What they can do is they could study their migration patterns, where they're congregating, where these sharks are laying their pups, and the way they can do that is with the tags that are placed in the dorsal fins of these sharks. So basically, a fisherman catches a fish or a shark or a rough-tailed stingray, and they tag it. They jot down the location it was tagged in, what kind of condition the fish is in, whether it's a male or female, how big it is, how long it is. When we're talking about a stingray, you measure their barbs, you measure their full length from nose to tail, their tail length, and then their wingspan, and they can judge how old the stingray is. And let's say a shark, you tag a shark, you basically measure the full length of the shark from nose to tail, and then also the fork length. The fork length is from the nose to where the tail splits off. And then that measurement gives you can estimate the weight of the shark, and then you check if it's a male or female. And then let's say a scientist or somebody diving down into the ocean who is researching sharks. I don't know, you can see, I'm sure you've seen it on Shark Week. They go down to the ocean and they start feeding tiger sharks, bull sharks, black tips. And when they do that, if you notice some of the footage on Shark Week, you could see that a lot of these sharks have the tags coming out of their dorsal fins. If they get close enough, they try to record that tag, and then they jot it down in their notes. And then also another way that those tags can be recovered is if another fisherman somewhere else, or somebody on a fishing vessel catches that shark that's tagged, they're supposed to write that number down and they report it back to the agency that the tag is from. And then with that, the agency basically jots down where these sharks have been, at what times they're there, and what they can do in those specific situations is they could limit commercial fishing in those areas, because a lot of these commercial fishermen, I'm not saying all of them, but a good amount of them, sometimes they get these sharks caught up in their nets. And what happens is, obviously, the sharks could die, and instead of them taking the shark out of the net, they just go ahead, cut the netting around the shark, and leave the shark into the ocean with netting in its pectoral fins and its dorsal fins, sometimes in its face. And then they just wrap up a new net, because for them, it's time is money. So they're not going to spend time and possible danger of them trying to get the shark out of the net. Fortunately, for me, I went out with News 12, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, and I showed them what I was doing, and it was nice because we caught a I think it was a brown shark, and it was all netted up. It had nets in its pectoral fins, cutting into the side of its stomach, and it was clearly a commercial fishing net. And I went over there, ran over, cut it out, sent her back on her way. And it was nice to have that on film, because then you can show the public what these commercial fishermen, and just people, not again, not all commercial fishermen, but a lot of them are not doing the right thing. And then also you have, on the other side of the world, something known as shark fin soup, which I don't know if you've heard of it,
Oh
but
yeah, shark
yeah,
finning
it's
over
just
there is terrible.
yeah,
It's
it's really bad.
unbelievable.
It's just I even hate talking about it, because I love these creatures, and
People
these
need to
guys
know
just,
about it though.
I know. These guys, they cut their fins. They catch the sharks, and then they cut their fins off. They don't kill the shark at first. They just cut their fins off, and then the shark is still alive, and they dump their carcass over the boat. And now this thing's obviously going to die, but now it's got no fins, and it's all for a little bowl of soup. That's maybe it takes. There's nothing even in the soup. It's just like two shark fins, and it's like $100.
Yeah, it provides zero
Yeah,
nutrients.
zero new. It's just a delicacy. Like, oh, look at us. We're you know what I mean.
They
We're
think that it improves sexual stamina or something.
yeah. I mean, come on, man. Like, it's just destroying our oceans. The sharks that are at the top of the food chain in the ocean. If you're going to start screwing around with sharks and their habitat and how they're surviving, it's going to affect everything underneath, which will ultimately affect us on land. And you got these guys on the other side of the world that are just destroying our ocean like that. So tagging these sharks, maybe we could figure out where they're congregating, and all the commercial fishermen and the people who are dealing with the shark fin soup, and finning all these sharks. The federal government can figure out where that's happening, and put limitations and regulations in those certain areas in the sea.
Yeah, the problem is though where it's happening is just out of the U.S. jurisdiction,
Right,
and these other governments. There's not
right,
much they can do about it. They have limited resources, so
right,
it's a
right. They're
really tough
trying though.
situation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they are trying to try and get involved with the federal government on that side of the world, to try and mitigate the amount that's happening. You know what I mean? To put like more
it's
regulations, because they don't even
unbelievable to
have.
see the amounts of
Dude,
sharks that
if you
are
looked
finned.
on,
If you
oh
YouTube
my
it, you
god,
could see it. I used to be a teacher, a middle school teacher, and I showed my students those videos from YouTube, and they were just blown away that it was even a thing.
it's
They were
crazy.
like, "You mean they just float to the bottom and die?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's what's happening."
Dude, it's literally heartbreaking to watch that and see what the humans can do to ocean life.
Terrible. But on a lighter note, how many sharks have you tagged?
Oh man, I have a folder because I keep all my documents. Probably, I'd say hundreds. Definitely hundreds, maybe close to 1,000. But I do this year round. I do this over here in New York. I go down to Florida to do it. I go out of state, North Carolina, South Carolina. I'm all over the East Coast. I'd like to expand and go to the West Coast, and maybe over there in Texas. But yeah, I do this year round. So I'd say I've managed to tag close to 1,000 over the past 9 years.
That's incredible. Incredible. How many species you think?
Oh man, one, two, three. I'd say like 6 or 7. and it's crazy because I sometimes I tag these things. I'll tag like I tagged a spinner. What was it? 6 years ago? No, 5 years ago, and it ended up uh, near Florida. And then I tagged like 7 or 8 years ago a sand tiger, and that thing ended up 5 years later in the Gulf of Mexico, which is crazy. A scientist
Wow.
actually, yeah, a scientist was not a biologist was diving, feeding sharks, and he while the shark was coming by him, he saw the tag, took a picture of it, recorded it, and then sent it up to NOAA. And then they every time there's a recapture on the fish that I catch and tag, they tell me the information, what happened, where it was, and all that, which is really interesting because clearly it's working. You know, they're able to figure out where they're going, how they're migrating. So it's definitely playing a big role in the ecology of the ocean.
So, what type of patterns have you noticed?
So basically, what they do, from what I've noticed, is in late June they come up from the southern states. So like near from Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, they start heading up to us in New York here. And then mid-July into August, they even venture up further up to Massachusetts. And every year they've been coming up sooner and sooner. So last year, I'd say they were coming up mid-July. This year they're coming up early July, and that's because our water temperatures are slowly rising sooner, and also the water is getting cleaner. If you notice, if you go to the beach and there's not a lot of waves out, and the surface calm on a nice hot day, and you look at the water is pretty crystal clear. It's almost like I've taken a picture last year on a very calm day at midday, and the water looked like I was in Florida, man. It's unbelievable, and the oceans are just getting cleaner and they're getting warmer. Last year, this at this time, the ocean temperature was 2 degrees lower, and that 2 degree difference is going to bring in uh, more pelagic species or different types of species from down south. So the patterns are changing by the year in that we're getting more species, we're getting different kinds of things heading up the coast. I mean, somebody just caught a drum on Long Island, and then I think last year, the year before, they're catching
A red drum, right?
yeah, which is crazy. And
And it
then they're
was
also
was there any size to it?
I don't need. I just heard about it. I didn't go into detail. I didn't go into like. I didn't investigate it, but I heard it, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty interesting. And I do believe it because I'm seeing black tips here. I'm seeing bullnose rays, and it's all those things they're all down south, and they're just coming up every year. I'm noticing
Some
more and
big
more.
cobia have been moving up in past summers.
That's what I was gonna say too. Like 2 years ago, a cobia. Now last year, even a couple more were caught, and now this year, I'm sure late July, early August comes around, there's gonna be even more. So, and then like I said with the black tips, I mean, you never see hammerheads come really too close to the island. I mean, you could see them 2 miles out on the boats. A lot of the charter guys that I talk to a lot of the boats, and they say they see a lot of hammerheads when they go out 2 miles, 3 miles last year. And then the other day, I'm fishing, and one of the lifeguards came over to me, and he said, "Hey, did you hear at Jones Beach over there? They spotted I think it was a 8 foot hammerhead, 300 yards off the surf." And I said, "No." In my head, I'm like, "No way, really?" But then in the back of my head, I said, "There's no way they're coming that close." And then my rod hits like 30 minutes later. The freaking reel is screaming, and I see probably like 100 yards out into the surf, black tip just freaking airborne like a torpedo. Because whenever you catch those black tips, they're always jumping out of the water. So things like a torpedo, I'm like, holy shit, a black tip. So I had a black tip. I brought it in. I tagged it, and the primary predator of a black tip is actually the hammerheads. The hammerheads go after stingrays and black tips. Um, so that basically just certified that there definitely was a hammer at Jones Beach the other day, 300 feet off, 300 yards off the beach. So that's really interesting there. And I actually told a couple of my buddies last year and the year before, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing hammers up here. And then with the hammers, you start seeing other sharks also, which nobody should be afraid of, obviously.
Well, there have been a few attacks recently, huh?
I wouldn't call them attacks. I never call them attacks. I call them accidents because if they wanted to attack somebody, they would finish them whole. You never hear of a shark finishing a human whole. It's always they
What
take a
about
bite.
the triathlete woman who was like literally went airborne from a great white up in Cape Cod a few summers ago? Now,
Yeah, but she didn't. I don't think. I think she. Well, what was she? I think she. The
it's
white
30
breached.
yards offshore.
Yeah, yeah. The white breached on her, but he didn't finish the whole human. Like when you have a shark of that caliber, it's like an accident. You get into an accident with a Mini Cooper, you know, and an 18 wheeler hits the Mini Cooper, the Mini Cooper is going to be demolished, and if you have a
Yeah.
Mini Cooper hitting an 18 wheeler, it's not going to do that much damage. Just like, let's say you have a 4 foot brown shark taking a bite out of somebody or accidentally, biting someone, it's going to do way less damage than if a great white accidentally bites you. A great white accidentally bites you, it's most likely going to sever
Yeah, it's
a
over.
vital.
Yeah,
You know, a
definitely.
brown shark is most likely not going to sever anything vital. So
Have
that's
you
where.
ever come close to getting bit?
Uh, yeah, but it's only the little ones. The big ones, not really, because the big ones aren't as agile. The little guys are the ones you have to be careful about because once you start screwing around with them and taking the hook out of their mouth, and you got to really watch and be mindful because the little ones, they're so agile they could twist and grab you. But I've never been bit, knock on wood. But there were a couple close calls.
Let's hear about them.
So I had a spinner on what was it? I think it was 2 years ago. And when they hit, they're called spinners because a lot of the times when they attack their prey, they basically do like a little torpedo. So when I'm bringing it in, the thing's like torpedoing and just it's literally like spins while it's coming in. And they have so much energy. These things, those in the black tips, have crazy energy. So anyway, I bring it in and I see it's a spinner, and it wasn't big. It was maybe like 4.5, 5 feet. And I went to go grab the hook out of its mouth, and it was in the corner of its mouth, but the barb it was giving me a hard time. I couldn't really remove it. So I asked my buddy to go grab the hook remover, and we tried to put that in his mouth, and the hook remover wasn't working. So I told him, I said, "Listen, just take this back to the tackle box. I'll deal with this with the fish in the surf." So I'm trying to deal with it. I'm giving it water from the waves, and as I told myself, let me try and switch to the front of the shark and try and maneuver it that way. So I go to switch. As I let go of the tail, the head decides to go left, and I decided to go around left when I was going to the other side, and he was so freaking close to my it was my left knee, and he literally just you could see you it was like in freaking slow motion. I watched the tooth like just skim my skin. I didn't nothing There was no blood or anything drawn, but it was so close. And then I went to its mouth, I took the hook out, and then that just made me even more look at its teeth and see, holy shit, that would have that would have probably took a nice chunk out of my knee,
Wow.
skin wise, obviously. But yeah, there's close calls when you're dealing with them in the surf like that
What's
because
another good one?
probably the hammer that I just recently caught in Florida. I had it's like 11 or 12 footer, and I go into the water when it's coming in, and he was like, I don't know, 70 yards out, and I go into the water maybe like chest deep to try and leader him in, and I'm leading him in, and he was coming in. He wasn't coming in fast. I was pulling him, and he was coming in rather slow. And he had energy, but not a crazy amount of energy to rip the leader out of my hands. So I'm pulling the leader. All of a sudden, dude, he came like 40 feet from me, and he must have either seen me or noticed he was getting close to sand. he, instead of booking the other way to go into the ocean, he comes right at me. Like I just see the huge dorsal fin out of the water coming straight for me. I'm like, holy shit! I literally just jumped in the air, and I almost cleared the whole shark. That's how fast he was moving towards me. And then, yeah, dude, I turned around, I ran out of the water. I'm like, holy shit! So then we just kept fighting him in the with the 80 from the beach until he got closer to the surf. And that's probably the last time I'm going to go in chest deep to go grab a 12-foot hammer.
So who tail roped it?
I don't tail rope any of them, to be
Oh,
honest with
really?
you.
Okay.
No, I
How do you
think
land them then?
the tail rope is hard. I'll tell you right now. I don't like the tail rope because when you tail rope them, you're dragging the fish backwards into sand. You know, like picture it. The tail is facing the beach, and you're pulling this thing, and the sand is going through its scales, and it's not a. I never thought that it was too good for the shark. So what I do is I put a good amount of tension on the leader with the reel. So somebody's on the beach, two guys on the beach holding the rod and reel, and really tensing up that drag, and just cranking, putting it in putting the reel in first gear and just cranking the front of the fish toward the beach, and then with the waves, that helps bring the shark in. And then basically when the shark is, I don't know, maybe like 5 yards from the shore, that's when I go in there and deal with the shark half underwater. So if you look at the videos on my page with the hammerheads that I'm taking the hook out and everything, they're basically, their heads underwater. You could really just see their fin, and then I'll just go in, I'll pick the head up, and that's how I take the hook out. I'll have somebody hold the head up, and then I'll finagle the hook out, and then when I bring it back into the ocean, that's when I grab the tail, and then I drag it backwards, but while the wave is receding. So while the wave crashes over the shark, and then as it recedes, the shark is getting water through its gills because the wave's receding into the shark's face, and then I spin them out. But I just have better maneuverability doing it with my arms and hands than with a tail rope. I feel like the tail rope is if you have something like crazy huge and you can't do it by yourself, and you need 3, 4 guys to start pulling. I mean, this sport, you gotta have some muscle to bring these things in and take them back out. The last thing I want to do is put a tail rope on that's going to be abrasive on the tail and drag the fish up with sand going through its gills.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of timing involved. Definitely.
That's why you got to definitely also work extremely quickly, which I work very quickly. I don't know if I'm going to be posting a couple new YouTubes up of how I get the hook out quick and these sharks back on their way. But then you got guys who want to get into the sport, and they don't do things quickly, and they procrastinate, and I see it on the beach a lot. And I try to educate everybody that I see, but there's only so many people that I can talk to, which
Yeah.
I'd love to start a class. I'll do it for free and just teach people how to handle these fish properly, and how to keep them in the wash and take the hook out. Because a lot of people, they just cut the hooks and leave the hooks in these sharks' mouth, and thinking, oh, it'll rust out. Like, that's the biggest misconception in fishing. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that the hook will rust out. Listen, I have a mason jar with salt water in it, and I have a hook inside, and it's been in there for 7 years, and that hook is not even a bit rusted.
Wow.
I just think
Unbelievable.
I think that's the worst thing. If you can try and get the hook out with
That
quick
is a
time,
very common misconception.
everybody, how can you even think that a stainless steel hook, is gonna rust out in a week or 2 weeks? It's gonna take years and years and years for that thing to rust out.
So how do you
Not
deal
to
with the
mention,
stingrays then?
not what do you mean when to get the hook out?
Yeah, or even landing them. How do you get them?
The stingrays are very. If you don't know what you're doing, it's very hard. If you know what you're doing, they're the easiest fish to bring in.
Because I feel like you can get them right to the edge of the surf and they'll just sit there.
So there's a trick that when they suction down, what you have to do is you have somebody on the rod, and the whoever you're with or somebody on the beach, you go down to where the line is going from the rod into the ocean, and you have one hand, you grab the braided line or mono, whatever line you have, and in your left hand, and with your right hand, if you the hand that's closer to the beach, you start plucking it like a freaking guitar, and the vibration gets sent down the line to the stingray's mouth, and they don't like. I came to find out that they don't like the vibration. So you do that enough, maybe after like 15, 20 seconds, they come up off the bottom, and they're not suctioned anymore. And then that's when you tell the guy or whoever you're fishing with up on the beach, yo, reel, hurry up, he's up. So then he comes up off the bottom of the sand, and then he'll come in 10, 20 yards, and then he'll do the same thing. He'll suction back to the bottom, and he'll just sit there. It's like dead weight, like you're stuck on a rock. But then if you pluck it again like a guitar, just keep plucking, he'll come up again, and then you bring him in. Then after you bring him in, I always have like a little hand rag or a towel to grab the end of the tail, because the tail, not only is there a barb at the base of the tail, but also near the top, there's the whole tail is kind of spiky, and that whole tail and barb is full of bacteria. The last thing you want is getting cut with that and it going into your bloodstream, and you become septic.
Have you ever
Um,
gotten barb before?
no, I haven't, thank God. But yeah, I bring them up, and then I flip the stingrays on their backside, remove the hook out. Every single time, it's usually right on the bottom lip that it's hooked, and then takes 2 seconds to remove, and then I flip them back on their stomach side, and then I just take them back out. Well, I'll take the measurements, the wingspan, the nose to tail, the tail measurement, and the barb measurement. I'll tell if it's a male or female. Write all that down, tag it,
How
and
can you
then
tell if it's a male or a female?
the males have basically they look like two long like balls, basically, but they're long, and that's a male. And then the female
The
has, it's just two.
claspers, or they call it
Yes,
claspers?
exactly right. They're called claspers, and then the females have it looks the same thing as a male, except there aren't any claspers coming out. Very, very easy to tell. If you Google it, you could see that what the claspers look like on the males and what the female looks like.
Interesting.
Same thing with sharks too. They have the same anatomy
Same
in that
feel.
aspect, right?
So let's hear about the process of how you fish for these from shore, like start to finish. Like what's going into this?
So, okay. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can cast, which is how I started out. You can drone, you can kayak, you could take a surfboard out, you could take a boogie board out. Um, but all of those ways, I have the same luck casting as I do droning, the same luck casting
When
as
you
I do
say
kayaking.
droning, what do you mean? Like,
I'm gonna get in. Yeah, I'll get into that after. I'm gonna explain how to
gotcha.
cast and do it. Yeah, so I get the same probability of catching when I'm casting, when I'm droning, when I'm kayaking, or when I'm on the surfboard or the paddleboard. Everything is the same probability. That's what I've noticed over the past 9 years. Now, when you're casting, so basically with casting, I use bunker, the same type of bait you use for bluefish or striped bass. A lot of people surf cast with bunker, um, and the sharks like bunker also. So I usually go out there, I get a full bunker, and I'll cut it into four pieces. And I never really use the head, but the body is cut into four pieces, about an inch wide. And I'll just take the hook, usually a 9.0 or a 10.0 hook, and I'll hook it through the top of that piece of bunker, and then I'll just have a 6-ounce weight attached to the shark rig, and I'll cast that out as far as I can. And these sharks come right to shore to feed on bunker pods or anything hanging out um, within 20 to 30 yards from the shore. And I've caught big fish just casting. I mean, I caught a big 11-foot sand tiger one time casting. I've caught plenty of fish. But then you can also do drone wise. Drone fishing is becoming more and more popular, but a lot of the regulations are being stipulated into place down south in, where is it? I think North Carolina. They banned drone fishing. I think New York is going to ban drone fishing next year. I'm not sure what the cause of. I think it's because you're flying aircraft over federal parks or state parks or something to that
I think
effect.
it's
I
just
wish they were.
federal airspace.
Right. But I wish they weren't doing that because it is cool. But again, you can also cast, you could also kayak, you could paddleboard. But with the drone fishing, you basically attach a little drone release, which they sell on Google, Amazon, and it hooks up to whatever drone you'd like to buy. They have different models that fit whatever model you have, and you basically attach the line to the drone. You fly the drone up, fly it out, however far you want to go. You can't go too far because the reel could only have so much line on it, and then you drop it, and it's basically just like an extra 100-yard cast. But honestly, a lot of these sharks don't hang out that far to feed. They come in close to start to feed on the bait fish. So that's the other way. And then the other way is kayaking, where you can get an extra 50 yards out or 100 yards out or 300 yards out by attaching the line to your kayak, kayaking out and dropping the bait however far you want. You could do that on the paddleboard, the surfboard, the kayak. But yeah, like I said, it's all, I get the same probability doing all three of those things. So if you don't have a kayak, you don't have a drone, you can go out there and catch them on a cast.
So the sharks are moving up and down the beach from maybe, let's say, 20 yards out, 50 yards out to, like, what's the range that they're in?
I mean, they're everywhere. But when they're feeding and they want to feed, I would say they just come close, come from between 20 yards to probably 200 or 300 yards. That's really where they're coming in to feed, and then they go back deep into the ocean to go hang out. When they get hungry again, they come within that depth. That's from what I've seen.
Have you ever caught a thresher from shore?
No, I want to really badly. Everybody asks me that question if I ever did, and it's a tough one to get them from shore because you got to use bunker and you got to float the baits, and usually by the time you get the bait out to float it, or you have baits out, you either get bluefish screwing it up and taking your bait, or stripers taking your bait, or you have the other sharks like black tips, brown spinners, sand tigers grabbing your bait. It's tough. Basically, with that, you got to just find the bunker pot and just drop the bait on the bunker pot. But it's hard because the pot is constantly moving. When you're in a boat, you could chase after the pods. You could look. You're mobile on the water. From the beach, it's hard because that pod might be going up and down the beach, and you can't just pack up your shit. Go run down the beach and be like, "Oh, yo, he's over here." Next thing you know, you packed up. You know what I mean? You have a heart attack running up and down the beach like an
Yeah.
idiot.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about kite fishing from the shore?
Actually, no. I've Who told me about that? Somebody down south told me about kite fishing. I never, I never thought about doing it, but it sounds super interesting. Well, how do you even do that?
Basically, if you have the right wind, in the right wind direction, you could essentially do it from the surf. And you clip on the line to a part of the kite, and the kite flies out kind of far, and that line drops down straight down off the clip, and you can keep the bunker floating perfectly, flopping around at the surface, based off how much line you let in and out of the reel. It's a very interactive way of fishing. I mean, I did it for sailfish once, and I was manning 3 reels at once on one kite, manning 3 baits. And the whole time I'm trying to keep 3 baits even, dead at the surface. It was
Dude,
intense.
that sounds very stressful.
It is, but it's intense and it's fun. And
Yeah,
when
that's fucking
and when
sick.
you see that clip go off on the kite, it's on. It's
That's
on.
sick.
And
I
if you
gotta
don't
look
have the
into that.
wind, you can get helium, and you use a helium balloon and you float it out that way. You attach the helium
That
balloon to the kite.
That is sick.
That's how we were catching bluefin tuna last summer.
Holy shit,
We
that
were
sounds badass.
we were kite fishing off rockfish, uh, sending out bunker, and we were crushing them.
That sounds pretty badass. I gotta look into that.
I think it would work from shore, man. But like you said,
It's
there's
gotta.
also like, there's also nuisance species that could get in the way of what you were trying to target, like a thresher or something. Because I feel like, I don't know, thresher would just destroy a bunker just sitting perfectly at the surface, but what wouldn't?
Right, right.
Yeah. But so what's the longest fight you've had with a shark?
I would say not as long as everybody thinks, because I get that question a lot. I would say I'm trying to think which one it was. Probably the first time that I've ever caught a bull shark, which was it was in Sanibel Island with that guy, the dude Axe Sharks, Elliot Sudal down in Florida. I don't know if you heard of him.
Yeah, I have. Yep.
Was fishing with him, and that was the first bull shark I've ever caught, and it was during a pretty heavy surf. It was probably like 2 to 3 feet, but at Sanibel, 2 to 3 footers, like that's pretty a pretty strong surf over there because usually it's calm. But
Yeah, I've fished
and there
it.
was a lot,
It's normally a pretty calm
yeah,
area.
yeah, and there was a lot of seaweed that day, so we saw it got hit, and I went to he harnessed me up. I went behind the rod. I started reeling, and it just felt like just dead weight. But it was so much seaweed at the end of the line. The bull shark was hooked, but on top of that, there was a whole shit ton of seaweed. So Elliot's peeling off seaweed, peeling off seaweed. I'm reeling, I'm reeling. It didn't even feel like a fight. It felt like I was just reeling in dead weight. And then we thought it was just a ton of seaweed. And then after I think it's like 30 minutes, which is not that long because most of the sharks I bring in there, it's maybe like a 10-15 minute fight. Even the big hammers that are like 11 footers, you got to get those things in quick because the quicker you get them in, the more energy they have. So you got to really, it's not time to screw around and fight the fish with light tackle. But anyway, so we get that bull shark in after like 30 minutes and well, we got the seaweed in. And then all of a sudden we realize, holy shit, there's a freaking bull shark attached to this thing. It's a pretty big one. And then we got all the seaweed off and removed the hook and sent it back on its way. And it was pretty green fish, very alive, and just swam back on its way. But that was probably the longest fight I've ever had was 30 minutes. The rest, like I said, they're like 15, 20, 25 minutes on the big ones. And
Wow.
then they're in. Because like I said, you got to be fit to do this kind of stuff, especially when you're dealing with the bigger fish. Because if you're not physically capable of reeling in these fish on high drag, and pulling them in from the beach, you're gonna kill these fish because you really have to get them in very quickly and deal with them quickly so that they have the energy to make it back out. A lot of the kids, a lot of these kids, 15, 16, 17 year olds, they're going out to try and do this and they go out with one friend and now they're passing the rod off between them two and maybe they could only crank the reel in 15 yards and he passes to his friend, he cranks it in 15 yards. Now the shark runs again for another 40 yards and they're already gassed out, both of those kids, and they're tired. Like
Yeah.
you have to have the stamina, the energy, the power, and a couple guys to just start handing off left and right just to get the fish in quicker. It's nice to be fighting the fish, it's a good feeling, but you got to really think about the other side of the line.
And also, when it's being landed, I mean, the shark is made of cartilage. So if the shark is on the sand, isn't it technically crushing itself?
That is true, yes. But if you have half, if you, like I said, if you like, when you keep these fish in the wash, half of their, if at least half of their body is in the wash, and let's bring a hammerhead for, so to speak. Let's use that as an example. If you have half the hammerhead underwater, and you're dealing with the fish by pulling its head up and taking the hook out, and you have half that fish in the water with the waves crashing over it, even just suspended halfway, the buoyancy of half of that water on the bottom half of the fish is it's slightly bringing the fish up as long as you still have half that fish covered with water. I don't know if you know what I'm saying. Like if
No,
you have a
that makes
water bottle,
sense. That makes sense. But you see a lot of these kids posting with these sharks just on the sand, and you got to wonder how long have they
it's
had them on the sand for, and if
exactly
they are
that's
crushing themselves, then are they
right.
really going to swim off that strong? Like even if they do swim off, are they going to live that long?
Right, exactly. That's the big problem that we need to try and get rid of is a lot of these kids bringing the sharks up to dry sand, to have a photo shoot.
How do you
Some
feel about how do you feel about them making it illegal unless you're certified to be able to tag them?
I think something to that effect. Not that you have to be certified to tag them, but I think they should have some kind of
Or at least apply for a license and get it,
exactly right.
and be actively tagging them and consciously taking care of the
Ex-
fish as much as possible while landing it.
right. 100%. I 100% agree with you. I think that's a great idea. I mean, Florida has something to that effect where you have to take a shark course in order to be fishing from the beach for sharks. And it's a pretty in depth course. It tells you uh, what species, what kind of tools you have to have, how to properly deal with the fish. And I think New York should adopt that kind of idea and have surf fishermen who are going for sharks take a class and be licensed on how to properly handle them, what kind of tools, what kind of tackle we have to have. Because at the end of the day, I don't think it's a smart thing for New York to close down a fishery, you know, based on people that are uneducated on how to deal with these fish. Because regardless, you
Mean,
go out
yeah,
striped bass fishing, bluefish fishing, you're going to catch them anyway. So you might as well just uh, instead of not having a class on it, you have a class on it and educate everybody who's going to be surf casting, especially during the months of July and August when they're over here, and have everybody educated on how to deal with them, know to keep them in the wash, and the right tools to have bolt cutters, to have your tail rope, like you said, if it's a big enough fish, keeping them in the wash, removing the hook when you can, how to remove the hook, having hook removers.
yeah, like a whole safety course to it in itself.
Right, 100%. I pray that New York does that. I spoke to a couple DEC guys. I asked them how we can go about doing that. I even mentioned how I would teach the class free of charge. I wouldn't even care, like once a week. I'll have a bunch of people in, or it could be an online thing, and I'll make a PowerPoint or something. I don't know. I just hope New York State does something to that effect because I think it's smart. It's just safe for us and it's safe for the sharks.
Yeah, and we get to learn more about them as opposed to nobody getting to learn about them, and these guys with the commercial boats just cutting them out of their nets and dropping them overboard.
Right, 100%. Those videos are just they're heart wrenching when you see those poor things drifting to the bottom of the ocean, just half alive, with no fins. It's unbelievable.
It really is. So, do you follow that group O Search?
I do follow them. Yeah, I follow them. I have their app. Very interesting. I always watch the.
Maybe you could reach out to them.
But what would they do? I guess they would reach out to New York State.
I don't know. Maybe they could, I don't know. Maybe they could help somehow because you are essentially doing what they're doing from a giant expensive boat from land
Right.
for a fraction of, I'm sure, what their budget is.
Of course. Yeah. No, that's
So
a good
I don't
idea.
know.
I
Maybe,
really should.
might be worth it.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'm gonna check. I'm gonna look into that.
So what type of tackle are you using?
Um, uh, Line wise, I am using anywhere from like 50 to 75 pound test on my spinning reels, and then on the conventionals like the Avids, the 80s, I'm using probably 130 to 150 pound hollow core, and then that's top shotted with like 200 pounds of mono, and I usually put on like 100 to 150 yards of that, and then that goes to about I think it's 1,500 pounds mono, and then that goes to just cable leader and then the hook. That's for the conventional. And then for the spinning, it's the like I said, 50 to 75 pound braided line, and then that goes to I'd say like 400 pound mono leader, and then that goes to cable, and then the hook.
And you do your own rod wraps too, right?
I just came out with that. Like 3 or 4 years ago, I put batting grip tape on my rod, and then it felt pretty good. And it was just like for shits and giggles. I was like, let me just throw it on, see what it looks cool. Like it'll give me better grip because I hate the foam. All these rods are made with this shitty foam or cork. It's the worst. So I put that on, and then I was like, oh shit, this is pretty cool. So I decided. Then I posted it all over social media on the TikTok, the Instagram. Then it started going viral. They're like, where are you getting the tape? Where are you getting this? So then I just went ahead and I spent a good amount of money to make my own and patented and all the hard work, the trademark and the patenting, just a lot of stuff went into it.
So you're really
But
trying to make a living off this, huh? This all fishing
I'm
game.
trying, man. I'm trying.
It's
You know,
tough, right?
It's very tough, but whoever is making a living doing it, I give them a huge amount of props because it's hard to run a business nowadays, and
Well,
it's
the thing is, the problem is social media, and everybody thinks that everybody's making all this money, and
it's not
it's
like
not
that.
there. It's just not there. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
You know what it is? A lot of people see the following and they're like, "Oh my God, this guy's probably making so much money." It's not like that. You know, these platforms, they pay per view, like TikTok.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely nothing they're paying.
I
Nothing.
can't sell a T-shirt without running a $200 ad.
Right.
And it's like, where's the profit then? It's like
Right.
I'm pretty much just trying to get as many tees on people's backs as possible.
Right.
And that's that's all you can hope for. But
Exactly. At least
it's crazy.
and it's hard to find. Yeah, it's hard to find people that understand. I mean, you yourself, I'm sure you could understand. You know, you're
it's
a big
taken
hustler
forever
in the fishing game.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's taken forever to even get to the point that I'm at. I mean, I'm going on almost 10 years in 2024. It'll be 10 years with the BFC. So, and it all started out with an Instagram page and a .com and a dream, and that was it.
Right.
The rest is history.
I give you a lot of props, man, for sticking with it, because I'm sure there were times where you're like, "Oh, listen, I'm putting so much work and effort, like, nothing,
Those
I'm
times still happen to this day.
Yeah, man.
It's a never-ending grind, but if you're doing something out of the love for it, then you can always find a way to keep doing it.
100%. I give you a lot of credit.
You just don't want to give up on it. It's like a bad relationship, but you just can't give up on it because you still love her.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God.
Oh man. So anyway, when's the next trip you're going out on? What are you going to be targeting?
When am I going? I'm going next week. Looking to get on some black tips, and I don't know, maybe a bull. I caught a nice bull last summer.
Should that
not a nice
alarm
one.
people that there are bull sharks swimming around
No.
the beaches? I mean, that's the most dangerous shark on the planet, is it not?
That's what a lot of people say, but everything's dangerous on this planet.
Oh, come on, dude. Look at the stats. Maybe it has the upper hand because it can get into the brackish water.
Right.
So,
and they like to hang out in the brackish water, and they like to hang out when the water's murky, so you can't really see them or anything. And then not only you can't see them, but they can't see you.
How the hell do you know that they can't see? They know you're there. They might not be able to see you, but they can sense you.
Yeah, they know that you're there. They could sense you, but they can't. Their eyesight is terrible. Sharks' eyesight.
What are you, a fucking shark optometrician or whatever?
No, dude, I'm serious. I'm serious. They don't have good eyesight, but that's why those bull sharks, dude, they not attack. They accidentally bite in. I hate the word attack, but they all these accidents, they happen when in the murky water. Like if you watch Shark Week, there's a couple stories on there.
Yeah, it's all brackish, murky water where these kids
they all say,
off.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
No,
unbelievable. What's the second most dangerous one according to the official list?
I have. I don't even. I'm not even sure. I'd
Tiger,
guess
probably
probably.
tiger.
You think so? I was thinking maybe white.
I'm gonna have an intern Google it right now. Hold on.
Let's see.
Hold on. Where's my intern?
Is it a tiger? You think?
Hold on. Top three. Top three. Oh, yep. It is the tiger shark.
Was number two? You knew the answer to that. Now
Yep.
you're trying to make me look bad here.
No, I'm not. No. And then also the third one is short fin mako. And I actually heard that two women in the Red Sea recently in the same week
You
both
see their
got
teeth?
they got destroyed by two mako sharks.
Oh my god.
Yeah, they were probably
Their,
short fin makos. They were just out for a little swim out by the resort, and they got blasted. It's
their teeth are
crazy.
nasty.
Oh, their teeth. Could you imagine just one nibble from them? You're gonna bleed out.
Mm,
It's over,
Dude, that's like 4 or 5 rows of razor sharp teeth that are like
and they'll just pop out and regrow.
unbelievable. But then look at the sand tiger's teeth, and they look almost identical to the mako, and they're the most docile shark out of all of them.
Yeah, it's insane. They look the
I don't know why they have
scariest.
that. I don't know why they have that scary look to them, and they're so calm.
Do you think it's possible that there's a shark out there, like a great white, that's over 30 feet long? Or do you think the oceans have just been overfished so much that that's not even a possibility?
I think it's 100% a possibility. I mean,
Really?
the biggest white I think right now is like 22 feet. I think, and I think her name is the Deep Blue. I think her name is, and it's a
22
female.
feet.
She's like 20 to 22 feet, and she's a female. But dude, listen, 75% of the ocean is undiscovered. So there, I mean, I believe it's up to you and whoever's listening if you believe that there's something bigger. If 75% of the ocean is undiscovered, I mean, there's got to be other bigger things. There's so many things that we don't even know about. Where scientists and researchers, they're discovering things every day.
Have you heard about the Farallon Islands?
The what?
I think they're called the Farallon Islands. They're off the coast of California.
No, what's that about?
Oh, dude, I got to message you about that. I read a book about it. It's crazy.
Really?
Great white, giant great white hunting ground. It's just like a patch of rocks with like a little research station out there.
Oh, is that the island with like mad seals on it?
Yeah, and these sharks just come through for a few months every year and just blast seals.
Dude, imagine flying a drone over there and getting that footage.
Dude, imagine fishing over there.
Dude, that would be so illegal, you know?
I'd never do it. But what about that guy Frank Mundez?
Yeah, the guy that's the great white guy, right?
Yeah, I think they based Quint from Jaws on him. He's from Montauk.
Yeah, I never seen Jaws. You believe that?
Get the hell out of here.
I swear to God.
Dude, you got to be kidding me.
No, I swear.
What? What? When are you going to watch it?
I don't know. I was on the beach with my uncle the other day fishing, and that movie came up. He's like, "Yeah," and they're all talking about like, doesn't that guy look like Quentin or whatever you just said?
Quint.
And I'm like, Quint, whatever. And
Who
who the
drives
hell
the boat, Chief?
dude? I go, who the hell is that? And like half the beach who was hanging out with me, they're looking at me like, what did you just say? They're
Yeah,
like the
dude,
guy
I
from
think I
Jaws.
think I might have to end this interview on that note.
Get the hell
I'm
out
not
of
even,
here.
not even kidding. And on that note, we'll talk to Chris later. See you, Chris. Adios.
You closed it, didn't you?
No, I really did almost do it. I just lowered the volume. Oh man!
That's
So
funny.
you've caught tigers from the beach?
I've never caught a tiger yet. No, I had a buddy who was fishing next to me down in Florida who caught one right next to me. I think it was like 8 feet, nice size. I've always wanted to catch one, but I never caught one.
I think they're beautiful.
The patterning on their
Yeah,
tail end
the
is
pattern.
unbelievable.
Oh, on the tail.
Yeah, like because it gradual from the front end of the shark. It's very the pattern is like gradual until you start hitting the middle to the end of the tail. That's when you really see the pattern like illuminate. It's freaking sick. Google one of their pictures and look at it. Look at it. That pattern doesn't really show up, and it like illuminates from the dorsal fin back to the tail. That's when you can really see the pattern better.
So what's your take on like the overall recovery of the great white shark? Do you think they're making a comeback?
100%. There's so many of them, dude. There's so many hanging out from here, from New York up to Massachusetts that are undocumented. Because if you look at is it O Search or the Sharktivity app? I have both of those apps. Actually, both apps do it. But whenever a great white pings near,
What do you mean
uh,
pings?
so they a lot some not a lot, but some of these great whites are tagged with RFID chips, where whenever they come close to, say, that they're tagged by obviously scientists, biologists, fishermen, and they're tagged with these RFID chips. And what they do is after they chip them, they put in their dorsal fin. If these sharks come within, I don't know, whatever age or yardage from the shore, there's these stations. I think they look like big telephone poles, I guess. And then if the shark comes within a certain range, the satellite tag pings off of that tower and says it records in the database that the great white shark, whatever great white was tagged, was this far from the shore. So if you go on the Sharktivity and O Search app and the Oceana app, it's the three apps. They can show you where they're pinging, what time they're pinging, and if you look at it, there's maybe like I'm gonna look at it right now actually. So let's see what happened this past week. Um, all right, so Sharktivity. So the past week I'm looking, and a lot of this is done near Rhode Island, Massachusetts, because that's kind of like where those whites hang out and lay their pups. But I'm looking now, and there are three satellite pings near Massachusetts. And then there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. There's like 28 to 30 sightings, which in order for there to be a sighting, lifeguard or there's spotter planes that fly over the beaches. They log it into the authorities, and the authorities put it into the app. There's like 20 to 30 spottings and sightings. So basically, if you had two or three just this past week, two or three that are tagged that pinged, and there's 30 that were seen that weren't pinged, because clearly those 30 that weren't pinged, they don't have a tag on it. There's there's a ton more that researchers haven't looked at or haven't caught or haven't tagged. So your question in the beginning, are they making a comeback? It's very clear that they are making a comeback.
Do you think that the seal population off the coast of Cape Cod is contributing to shark attacks up there?
Um,
Or should I say shark accidents up there?
Thank you for that. Number one. Number two, it's hard to say. I mean, sharks are always going to hang out where there's bait and where they can eat. Especially the great whites, when they're seals, that's their obviously primary prey. They're going to hang out over there, just like that island you were talking about on the west coast. Um, Contributing to shark attacks over there, the more lethal ones, yeah, because you have the great whites hanging around, and you have a lot of surfers over there that are wearing black wetsuits. And when you're wearing a black wetsuit and your legs are hanging down from a surfboard, your legs dangling like that, it looks like a seal to the shark, especially on a beach where it has a plethora of, hundreds of seals swimming around. That's why I always wondered why they're making these wetsuits black. They should make them more like neon colored, just so that sharks can differentiate when they get close enough. It might. I don't know if it'll work,
I heard they
but
have a like an anklet that you can wear. That's a shark repellent. It gives out some type of electromagnetic vibration or something, and
I don't
it
know. It
actually
sounds like that would attract a mako.
no, it
How they have that
actually.
mako magnet.
I was on this kid's podcast, Stingray podcast, and he's a big spear fisherman, and he said that he spearfishes with bull sharks, all types of sharks around, and he'll be bringing in fish, and they'll be following the fish in, and as soon as they get near him with that anklet thing on or whatever it is, bracelet, they immediately dart away. Have you heard of that?
No, what's it called?
I don't know. I gotta ask him though, but it's definitely something that spear fishermen use.
That's pretty sick.
I think it's the newest form of shark repellent that there is on the market.
That is pretty sick. It probably messes with their electrosensitivity and all their.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty sick.
And it gets him away. He said he's been in situations where he was surrounded by hundreds of sharks, tuna fishing, bringing in tuna, and the sharks following him in. Then all of a sudden they're just darting away.
That would be sick to get that on film. If he
I
was
think
wearing
he
a GoPro or
does.
something.
I think he does because he showed me one clip of it. He probably has more of it. Got to look
Holy
into
shit.
that. But I think we got to do a part 2 of this episode, man. This is all the time we have for tonight. But I'd love to check in at the end of the summer and see what you caught and talk more about everything. This has been great. We talked about conservation. Because I think a lot of people, to the average person who looks at your page, they might not get what you're about. They just see somebody catching sharks, and a lot of people love sharks, and they might have the wrong opinion about you, but you're doing a great thing out there, and we need more anglers like you trying to make these conservation efforts for these fish. So thank you.
Right, I appreciate that.
All right, man. Well, listen, I'll talk to you soon. Be safe out there. And let's not hear about any more close calls.
Yes, 100%. Thanks for having me, and I guess we'll touch base on part 2. And thanks again, and keep grinding on your end too.
I will.
Just waiting for you to do